So without any further delay, I'm excited to hand things off to Levin, the head of design at Collab Software.
Thanks, Kyle. Hi, everyone. I'm Levin. I'm really excited to do this presentation. So let me just start by sharing my screen. Let's make sure that is working okay. We just did a trial run, which should work out okay. So you should see a screen there with a book that says Sprint. Yeah, so a little bit more about me. As Kyle said, I am the head of design at Collab Software, a local startup. Prior to that, I worked at Trello/Atlassian for 5 years. I worked on their monetization team, their platform team, and their mobile team, so iOS and Android apps. Prior to that, I also worked at Shopify for a year. I also hosted the first web and design conference here in Newfoundland, and it was actually hosted in the Inco building. I don't know if it's still called that, but that's how long ago it was that we ran that conference, almost 10 years ago this year. So that's a little bit about me. This presentation will be around 30-40 minutes. I want to give as much time as possible for discussion afterwards. And yeah, I'm really excited to get started and let you know about design sprints and what they are all about. So let's get started. So what are design sprints? Well, design sprints was actually something that came out of Google Ventures. And it's something that they realized that they wanted to introduce human-centered design into their process of building all their products. But that could be time intensive, and it required a lot of people to be focused to do that work. So they try to find a way to do this something within a week's time, where people, instead of typically the way products would work, is someone would have an idea for a project or for a product, they would go out and build it, and then they go and launch it, and then that's when the learning would happen. And then maybe the product was built wrong, there was so much wasted time and money, and they thought there needs to be a better way of when we ship something that we can have all of these learnings ahead of time to ensure that we're building the right thing, to question the first prototype, to try and iterate and learn from those and make them better, to really do true innovation. So to do that, we really need to understand the problem that we're looking to solve and who we are solving it for and how they intend to use our product. So we really need to know all of those things before we really go out and build anything. And we want to have our solution validated before we even get to step 2, which is to build something and then to launch it. In my career, I've been very lucky to work for some really great companies and observe many other great companies, and we see this time and time happen again. But why should we do a design sprint? And so I want to do a little bit of a detour and talk about human-centered design and what that is. And start trying to share my screen here. Okay, so design thinking is a human-centered approach to innovation, anchored in understanding customers' needs, rapid prototyping, and generating creative ideas that will transform the way you develop products, services, processes, and even organizations. So this is not just for product designers like myself who are in the tech industry. This is really for any industry at all. And by using design thinking, you make decisions based on what customers really want instead of relying only on historical data or making risky bets based on instinct instead of evidence. And I see this happen time and time again, is we have this gut feeling of this thing might work. We go on and invest all this time and money to build something. We put it out into the market and people can't use it. It's actually not solving a problem. And so design thinking helps us, again, create a framework for building the right thing earlier. So a little bit more about that is just thinking about bringing together what is desirable from a human point of view with what is technologically feasible and economical viable. So this is anchored in 3 things. Is it feasible? Is it something we can actually make? That's a question that we should be asking ourselves before we get into the build process and halfway through thinking, oh, right, we can't really build it that way, increasing scope or whatever the case may be. We also got to make sure that it's desirable Do people actually want the thing we're building the way we're building it? And is it viable from a business standpoint, from a budget standpoint? Is it actually something that, one, we can build with the resources that we have? And if you're looking to build a business, is this something that we can actually sell and something that people will actually buy to sustain the business model? So it considers all those three things. So again, just repeating there what I had said, is it desirable? What makes sense for people and for people? Is it feasible? What is technically possible within the foreseeable future? I'll give you a quick example of this one. Before Netflix, there were like 5 other Netflixes before. It's just that the technology wasn't there. The bandwidth, the internet bandwidth wasn't there. We need to ask those questions. Can we actually build these things? This is a great idea. Unlimited entertainment, delivered to people's households. They need to go to a movie theater or whatever the case may be. Could we actually do it? Great idea. And many people failed before actually Netflix made it possible because they were just at the right time. They knew when it was technically possible. Again, Netflix started with DVDs and they shifted to online when they knew it was a time to do that. So how does this look like from a framework? One, we want to frame the question. What we mean by that is, what is the problem that we're looking to solve? Really understanding that, falling in love with the problem. Then we want to gather inspiration. We're not going to go and steal other people's ideas, but what have people done? What have people tried? What has worked? What has worked for others? Potentially, what could work for us in a completely different industry? Then you want to generate tons of ideas. In this framework, there are no such things as bad ideas. You really want to generate as many ideas now, so to set that collaborative environment, and then we can converge on the ideas that we think will make most sense to solving our problem. We want to make ideas tangible. So, for example, we want to test this with users. So, what can we prototype? I think of when we build something for tech, we try to build a clickable prototype. It's really just like images with hotspots that you click on one area, it takes us to a different page. I think about for physical products, maybe a 3D printer could work. Maybe, a cardboard cutout could work. Maybe it's even marketing material that you can have for your product. Something that we can actually test and make tangible. Once you have that done, you definitely share your story, that final product. One thing to note though, is in this process, it's not linear. You may test something and this is where you've learned and you realize, okay, we got to go back to generating more ideas because we learned something here that is not going to work for us. And then you start this process again. Maybe you need to go and gather inspiration again. Maybe it questions, your problem. And so this is how this kind of looks. It's kind of like, you're trying to understand the problem, you prototype something, you get to a solution, and you go back and you try again. So it's not a linear process, but more kind of like this. Very messy at the beginning, a lot of discovery, trying to understand, trying to design, think of a solution until we deliver our product. And again, just a little bit more, human-centered design focuses on people's everyday thinking, emotions, and behavior. So it's a creative approach to problem solving that involves the end user from the very beginning and places them at the center of the digital design process. Having people at the start is crucial. Again, as I've said before, I've seen so many times we go to build something and we forget who we are building it for. And that's really what we're trying to solve here, trying to make sure we're solving the right thing. How do people actually go about the problem that we're looking to solve? What is the problem? And so, yes, human-centered design is a unique approach to problem solving, one that occasionally feels more like madness than method, but you rarely get to new and innovative solutions if you always know precisely where you're going. This is a key part when we take on any new project, any new problem we want to solve. We shouldn't start any of those projects with thinking we already know the solution. That is something, again, we want to be conscious of. We want to go in there and be open to new ideas, open to hearing what other people have to say, challenging your own ideas. It's crucial to really build innovation is not having preconceived ideas, because that would lead to risky bets and potentially missing the right solution from the start. And again, it feels like madness at first, but there is a method to it, and we'll get to that framework. One example that I think about a lot is probably one of the best design talks I've ever seen is actually by Apple, and the designers and engineers talk about how they went about removing the home button from the iPhone. They truly wanted to understand, okay, if we're going to remove this button, this home button, as one of the best, user experience mechanisms on a device. Because if you ever got lost with this new computing device, just click the home button, you go back home, somewhere you're familiar, and you can start again. How do you go about removing that? You say, oh, well, it looks kind of just cool to just not have a button and have a full screen device. But beyond that, how would someone interact with it? And I'll share this link to this talk as well. You know what Apple did and the designers did? Again, they wanted to truly understand people and the way they use tools. They went back and studied how people use hand tools from the very start. What were some of the very first hand tools that we actually used? How could that inform our solution? From doing that and truly understanding that, they understood how our hands have even evolved to use hand tools, and then leveraging that knowledge to build a better device. It wasn't just simply, let's just remove it because we'll have full screen devices, cool. They actually went in and really, really tried to understand the problem to really build the most ideal product. And so great user experience designers. And again, I do this, as my 9 to 5, but I like to think that we're all designers. We're all experience designers. Again, if we don't do this in our everyday jobs, but we certainly do this when we experience any product. We can say, oh, this product really sucks, or this product is really great. We know what great design is. And so when we go to build something, great designers, user experience designers, help teams and stakeholders make better decisions by using questions to identify opportunities, reveal underlying needs, and understand user context. So a great example of this is, one, if someone has an idea for something and we want to challenge it, instead of making a statement on their idea, how about we challenge some of those by asking a question? Well, if we did this, how do we think it would affect this part of the product? Or if we did that, how would that change our marketing? Asking questions to challenge ideas or opportunities are really key to all this. We want to create a collaborative environment, and asking questions is a great way of doing that. Versus like, no, I think that sucks, or that's not a good idea because this is, maybe let's reframe that. Because we're even challenging ourselves of what we think is the right decision, because we don't really know. So we'll really get this in front of people and test something. So we want to, encourage that collaborative moment by asking questions versus statements or opinions about a certain idea. So again, at the beginning, there are no bad ideas. We need to be completely open with that. Let's throw those ideas up there. Let's keep them. Let's track them. Let's write them down. And that's divergent. We're going to have some divergent ideas, and then we'll converge. Then we'll start to think, okay, out of all these ideas, what do we think may work best? And thinking about it longer, we might diverge again, and then we can converge until we find that final end solution. So this is kind of what that looks like. Is at some point we will have to narrow down our solution, but let's be open to ideas at the start. And so I'll probably skip through this as quickly as possible, but human-centered design is an iterative process. There are 6 phases. There's observation, ideation, rapid prototyping, user feedback, iteration, and implementation. So I wanted to kind of keep those in mind as I talk through the second half of this talk. And so failure is central to human-centered design and design sprints as well, because we want to fail early and we want to fail fast so we can learn as much as possible. And so don't look at failure as something negative in this sense because we haven't shipped a product yet. We haven't spent 3 months building it yet. Instead, we probably spent about 3-4 days testing our idea, actually getting feedback, coming back and iterating quickly on that, and testing that new solution until we feel very, very certain and we've validated our end solution. So don't think of it as failure. Think of it as designing experiments through which you're going to learn. It's better to learn early before something's built in months and however much money spent into a project. Do it early versus when it's finally shipped and it's too late to change. One great example of this is, and I like to think of other products beyond tech and software in my industry. This is a screenshot of all the products Amazon shipped at one of their press conferences about 3 years ago. It is unbelievable. Glasses, rings, cameras, echoes. I don't know what that purple thing is. Like, I even forget. But what they wanted to do is they wanted to learn. They had an idea. And again, they have the budget for this. But even before they shipped each one of these, they wanted to see, one, do people actually want this product? Once they have this product in their home or once they're using it, what else do they want from it? And one of the really interesting things with this is that they looked at the security cameras and they noticed something, like people wanted them, but they didn't want to spend thousands of dollars to put webcams in every single room of their house. So instead, again, because they were willing to test something, they came up with a security camera that was embedded into a drone. So you only need to buy one. And if this security camera heard a noise in your house, it would literally fly up to that sound that it heard and beam that video through someone's personal device. Like, that is incredible. Like, how do you get there? That just doesn't come from instinct of just opinions. It really, really happened because they wanted to learn about their products, how people use them, and putting a security camera on the drone sounds very creepy and weird, but it's just a great example of showing this linear way of how they went from a lot of products to landing on something like this. Just don't know this stuff ahead of time. A great example of this is a great documentary that you can watch. It's called General Magic. And these people were the first people that really invented our smartphones as we know today. And had everything you could imagine. You can do e-commerce, you could do maps, you can get, all the things that we have now in our pockets. But this is in like the early 90s. Just, it wasn't feasible. It wasn't viable back then with the technology. But it wasn't failure really, because the people who worked on this team, those people later went on to, it was Tony Fadell who worked on this, who went on to build the iPod, because they took all their learnings from this to 20 years later. They took that learning to build the iPod. 10 years after that or so, we had Kevin Lynch, who went on to design the Apple Watch. So it's amazing how you can take all these things, you learn from them, build from those, and it will pay dividends down the road. So again, human-centered design starts from a place of not knowing what the solution is to a given design challenge might be. Only by listening, thinking, building, and refining our way to an answer do we get something that will work for the people we're trying to serve. Again, this is the people. We're thinking real people who are going to use our product. A great example that doesn't do with software right now, but an innovative way of doing this was PillPack. I'm not sure if you've heard of PillPack before, but PillPack looked at this really difficult problem of medication and ensuring that people took the right medications at the right time, getting the right refills, the right prescriptions. It is, you can imagine just how this is something we want to get right. It deals with people's health, and we want to make sure that people are taking the right medication at the right time. They used this type of framework to rethink how people took their medication. And they landed something like this, which is essentially all your medication comes prepackaged, all your prescriptions are already done for you, and this machine just dispenses the medication exactly when you need it. If you're going to go be out for the day, you can take out exactly the pills that you need. You don't have to think, am I taking the right amount? at this time or this other time. It's just kind of all done for you. And it all kind of goes from this complex way of taking medication to something down to a pill pack. And so it gets delivered to your home. You never have to go to the pharmacy. It all just just gets delivered to your home. And it also, they deal with, your prescriptions, and they work with your doctor, taking all that stress and that anxiety, and they just deliver it to you to your home. And it's just something really interesting to think about there. And again, why they thought, this is an image actually from their website. It really anchors people, anchors this problem in thinking about it. Is it's really about people at the end. And I love that they use this image on their website, because this is a real customer. And just that, that the relief that they have every day, that they know they're taking the right medication so they can live their lives as best they can. So again, at the end, we're always thinking about people and how our products can really help them. And, we can solve real problems in really innovative ways. And if we look at, is it viable from a business perspective? Amazon went on to buy this company for $1 billion and outbid Walmart, who wanted it as well. So we can build a great product that, solves a real need and also make the business case for it. And I'm just going to quickly skip, because I'm seeing already an hour 22 minutes into this. But I just want to kind of, with this one, just want to end with this, is that customers will pay a premium for well-designed products. And I think we see that almost every single day. So I'll talk about the iPhone again. They continue to beat records every single quarter, every single year. I don't know how that's even possible when there's literally so many other smartphone devices there. It's because Apple has built a premium, well-designed product, not just from the physical device, but also the entire ecosystem. All right, I saw some chats there, Kyle. I just want to pause there if you want to unmute with any questions that I may not be seeing.
No, I just put a little reminder in there that anybody who wants to pop in and ask a question, feel free to pop them in the chat throughout the discussion. And if you want us to turn your webcam on and promote you to be a panelist so you can ask that question in person, just pop a little X in the chat, and that'll let me know that you'd like to talk and turn your webcam on. And we had Melissa in the chat say that she thinks that pill pack solution is fantastic, just based on her own experience. So it's great to see that people can see the value in it just from their own personal struggle through different personal experiences.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I find that one's an example that I it's just so interesting to look at and learn about, just like all the different things that are involved and what it's looking to solve. So that's a really great example of this. How did we get there to that solution? And so the last slide on the human-centered design side of things is it's about solving problems, not implementing solutions. Such a different way of thinking about it. Solving problems, not implementing solutions. It's also about outcomes, measurable changes in customer behavior. We want to know that what we're building truly is making a change, that are indicators of success and value. So we want to validate them. We want to make sure that what we're building, is really, really solving a problem. And we want to be able to track that. We want to, know what success looks like before we ship something. So about design sprints. I think that framing, is important for the way we think about design sprints. Because again, if you go back to this slide, is we don't want to ship something and then try to learn how people are using it, and then trying to change the business model or the product itself afterwards. It's all out there. We want to do all of those learning cycles as quickly as possible. And so how does a design sprint help with that? Again, the aim is to create and test ideas quickly. So again, we fail fast. And again, it's a little bit messy as well, like we talked about earlier. We want to understand, define the problem. We want to sketch it. We want to decide on the solution. We want to prototype it, and we want to test it. And design sprints are typically 5 days, between 7 to 8 people in your company at max. You can do this with 3 people, 2 people, but you don't want more than about 7 or 8. And this is what this 5-day looks like. On Monday, or in your first day, you want to map, your problem. I'll talk about what that is. You want to sketch it. You want to decide on the solution. You want to prototype, and then you want to test it. And so what I'm going to do is to kind of help with this is I'm actually going to go through a design sprint with an actual product that what we did at Colab. And I think that'll be helpful to show how this actually works in practice. And also what's interesting here is that you can also do a design sprint in 3 days. That's really like the least amount of time you can do it in. So if you're really in crunch for time, you could do it in 3 days. But typically I suggest 5 days, no meetings, and you just fully focus on this. And I'll go through the activities. On Monday, what is it that we're looking to do on Monday? So on Monday is structured discussions to create a path for the sprint week. So in the morning, you'll start with at the end. That's an activity, which I'll talk about in a minute. So at the, start at the end is, if everything worked out perfectly, how do we see our, product, solving this need? What would need to happen there, and what would that look like? And to agree on a long-term goal. So again, having that long-term goal will be helpful throughout the rest of the week, because you'll have, you'll know your ideal product and how you want it to solve that problem. We want to map it out in terms of what the challenge is, and I'll explain what that is in a minute. And in the afternoon, you'll ask the experts at your company to share what they know. So again, it's great to hear from as many people as possible. This involves interviewing people at your company. Maybe it's bringing customers in or potential people who will use your product to really ask them questions about the product that you're building. And finally, you'll pick a target, an ambitious but manageable piece of the problem that you can solve in 1 week. And we'll see this again in practice here. So starting at the end, this is the sketch that is in the book. And they talk about, the Apollo mission where, the spaceship wasn't, I think it was like malfunctioned. And it's like, they started at the end. They said, okay, we need to bring people back to Earth. For those things to happen, like, let's work backwards. What are all the things that need to happen for this to work out? They didn't start with like the active problem that was happening, but they looked at the end, the ideal state and what it took, and worked backwards that way. And this is what it looked like for us at Colab. So the project that we were, taking on was, we had this project of people reviewing engineering files to make sure, okay, do we want to build this product? Can I get some feedback on this model that we have? Is there something that needs to be changed? Or this looks good for production. We had this review process, and there was something identified that we, people felt like it could be optimized, it could be better, but we really didn't know what that better was. So we started at the end. We looked at the long-term goals. What would these be? And then there's part of this where you add questions. So our long-term goals are like optimistic. If everything worked out great, how do we see this working out? And then the sprint questions are the opposite. You have to put on your pessimist hat on and say, what are all the things that could go wrong that would not help us lead us to our long-term goal? And that way, as our very first activity, we already kind of know what we want from it, but we're also identifying the biggest challenges for our project. And you write them down. And this is starting to build shared knowledge with your team. Everyone gets a moment to write their ideas down, read them together, understand everyone's biggest fears, and also their biggest hopes for the project. And then you go and vote on them. Well, what do we think is, the best long-term goal that someone's written down? What are some of the biggest fears? And you vote on them. And hopefully you can see kind of the voting here that happened on the screen. And you do mapping. So part of the mapping process is understanding all the actors who will be involved in this product or project, and what it would take to deliver it. What are all the steps at a very high level? And so by doing this, hopefully we can identify the biggest areas, the biggest opportunities where we see some conflict or some tension or some friction to really getting to the end result. Now, this is what our map looked like. Kind of messy and probably doesn't really mean a lot, but we took all the actors, like who would use this product, who's going to use it, and looking at all the areas to the outcome. What is the main thing that they want to achieve by going through this, this set of steps? And through here, it's only really through here, or through mapping it out, did we see areas of, okay, wow, all of these actors come together at this one spot. All of these actors really come together to really get us to that main objective. They all really rally around one area of this process. We should really focus on that area and make it really, really good. And that's what mapping will do. And it's a really, really difficult exercise because we're trying to stay high level. We're not thinking about every single step, but what happens in the process. The one in the book, they use like a coffee shop, which they use this design sprint methodology in it. They want to just create the best, buying experience. And you say, okay, someone comes in the store, they come to check out. Then the barista interacts with the customer, then the coffee is made, and then the customer is waiting for that coffee. Just think through the major key steps. There's payment, and thinking about that mapping is like, could this be better somehow? Again, for us, it was really looking at this and finding the critical steps in this process. So then this comes to the part where we're asking the experts. We've kind of mapped out the idea. We have our long-term goals and our biggest fears for this project. And what we're looking to do here during the Ask the Experts is we want to get real inside knowledge of what they know of the problem, what they know, of the people who might use it. What are some things that they want from it? And as we're going through these interviews, you want to be doing what our cards called How Might We? And it's a little bit of a funny way of doing it. But again, we're trying to ask questions. We're not trying to have opinions. So when someone says something during any of these conversations, you want to write down on a sticky note, how might we, in this case was I think, make the site like a friendly barista. So this is for their coffee shop. But for us, this is what we had. And all the how might we questions we had are framed in questions. Is something as simple as how might we make the sharing experience better? How might we make it easier to track the activity that's happened on this, 3D model? How might we make it very clear that this model has been reviewed? So asking questions like that, trying to reframe them, because when you go together as a team, you can read them together and try to, again, generate more ideas. And by writing them down and sharing them in a common space with your sticky notes, again, it's building that shared knowledge together. And then you'll see themes come out of this. So we grouped theirs into themes. Everyone did them individually, and then afterwards we gathered them together. And you'll see some of the biggest ones here is like ease of use. How might we make this easier to use? How might we make onboarding better? How might we make things more obvious that a model is in review? Things like that. And you start to pick out the major, again, opportunities for the problem you're looking to solve. And again, finding that opportunity. Where do we think we could have the biggest impact in this entire user flow and the way people will use our product? And then by focusing on that, then we can really start thinking about our long-term goals. What is the long-term goal that we want? And then our sprint questions, which are our most pessimistic questions, which is, this is some of our biggest fears. How can we solve some of them? Or this is the biggest challenge. How do we go about solving them? And so on Tuesday, so something you probably noticed already, that was Monday. That was all about understanding the problem. Nothing about solutions yet. Nothing about that at all. is we're trying to understand the problem as much as we can and create that shared knowledge with everyone. I know that it's very easy to want to get to that end state solution of like, oh, I think I know how to solve this thing. Let's just do it this way. It's more stepping back. It's not time for solutions yet. It was really about understanding. And then on Tuesday, it's more of that. You want to go and gather inspiration from people in the industry who have done something similar or things that have inspired us. And then in the afternoon, each person goes away and sketches out ideas of potential ways of solving the problem. So for us, this was actually just really the mood board that we created for all the inspiration that we saw out there. After understanding the problem from Monday, we looked at all the inspiration that was out there. What was really cool is that someone even brought in a video game of how, sharing worked on that video game. So it really could be just really anything that has inspired you or something that can lead to some inspiration for solving the problem. And then you want to do some sketching on your own. Everyone goes individually. This is time for each individual to really take everything they've learned about the problem and go really start thinking about that solution. These are wireframes, very much no details yet, but just general ideas. How might we go about solving this problem? We could probably do it in this way. And you do this on your own. And then you come together and you share this together as a team. We've heard of all the, our long-term goals, our biggest obstacles, what we learned from the experts, in our mapping of how people may use the product, some of the inspiration. How do we think we can do some of that? And then you go around and share. Everyone goes around and shares their ideas that they've had, and you go and vote on them. And sometimes you'll see some really magical things happen where multiple people have the same idea or thought about it a little bit differently that works really well with someone else's. It's really these moments when you really start to build that momentum of how we might go about solving that problem. And then on Wednesday, you get together, and now you have all of these competing solutions. You need to pick one. So together as a team, you decide which way we think we're going to go about solving the problem and how we're going to go about building our prototype that we're going to want to test with real people. And so a storyboard could be anything related to your project. Just think about all the steps in that process and just sketch them out. Everything's very low fidelity, wireframe type things. Nothing is final yet. This is what ours look like. We really try to think about the business logic of some things and write them down. So as a team, we could have this, again, common shared knowledge of the way we're thinking about the problem. Very, very, just like words on the screen of like, okay, we're gonna put this stuff here. Again, we're all remote, so we all did this through Figma. So you don't need to be necessarily in the room doing it together. And on Thursday, because you've decided on the way you're going to go solve it, you have the storyboard of essentially what it's going to look like. Now we really go and start to make our prototype. So you want to fake it right now. You want to go and build the real thing. Again, and the digital software, it's easy to use things like Figma and make a clickable prototype that people can actually test. And so whatever the case may be, you could use a 3D printer or something you can build quickly. Just anything at all, to kind of that you're going to be able to get in front of real potential customers or potential users. You want to build something you can prototype. And so this is the way this looks like, and this is why we want to do this. If we go through actually building the real thing, you'll learn over time, a long time, because you're building the whole thing out. But by using a design sprint, you'll hopefully build a prototype and you'll learn really, really quickly. And then you can kind of go to launch. So hopefully you want to do all that learning ahead of time. So for us, we started building this prototype and we wanted to get it ready for testing for that next day. And in Figma, this is what a prototype looks like. If you've never used a design tool before, these are all the clickable bits. If someone clicks on this, they'll go to this screen. If they click on that, they'll go to this screen. The whole goal of this is, as we're testing with users, is you say, okay, how do you think about that experience? Is this where you expect to find, that piece of content? Or is this where you expect it to happen when you click that button? It's about asking all of those questions. So Friday, it's really all about testing that prototype, getting it in front of users. For us, we tested this in front of 5 real customers of our prototype. They knew our previous tool, and now they looked at our new proposed tool and were able to give us feedback. We wanted to learn, what is your current experience with the current product? Now, what are your thoughts about this prototype? What do you think about it? What could be better? Some of the real insights that we got from them. And this is actually what we tested. So you saw earlier, we started with a lot of sketches. There was nothing that really looked final. But our prototype, this is an actual screenshot of one of the prototypes that we share. I'm not going to go into detail what it is, but this is the moment. The prototype is really as close as possible you can get to almost like the final end product to really collect their feedback. Again, it doesn't need to be as high fidelity as this, depending on your project, but it's something that you can test, something that you can gather some information from your users, something you can learn from. We took all of those learnings, we grouped them into themes of things we could, definitely learn from it, and then so we could iterate on that. I made a presentation, presented to the team, presented to the company. Again, this is the whole part about sharing the story. What did we learn? What things could we make better? And it's so you're going through all that, through that whole week, through that whole process, then you're really ready for liftoff. Because either you validated your problem, your solution, or you realize you need to have more work to do. Either way, you're in a better place now because you have real feedback. What's working, what's not, what could be better. And this is an example of something that we shipped literally last week. And through all of those sketches that you kind of saw, we actually ended up shipping this. And it probably doesn't mean much to you because you don't know much about the product, but it really did take us for really not understanding at all how we were going to solve this problem to this final end state. And what's really one of the biggest breakthroughs that we had is that when someone is reviewing something and wants feedback, they wanted to be able to look at their model, their 3D model along their activity, as you see on the screen there. They wanted to see them side by side. And it wasn't for that insight. Usually the way this was happening before, if someone would click on a modal, it would take them away from their actual 3D model they wanted to get feedback on. And it was this very context-heavy switching experience, which was open my 3D model, and then you had this big pop-up come up with the activity in it. You had to close it to go back. It was just really, really not a optimized experience. So instead, this was the final end state where someone could be looking at the feedback given to them on their 3D model they're working on and quickly reference that and quickly start making decisions, quickly start taking next steps in their process. So hopefully that gave you an insight. I know I ran a little bit late, but of how we actually used it and how we're thinking about, human-centered design thinking approach to this, because we're thinking we're building this for real people who are going to use this every single day to that final end result. It wasn't because of that real feedback. It wasn't because we were testing this ahead of time. We never would have arrived at this final state, which now our customers are using it and are absolutely loving it. It wouldn't have been possible without this framework. So you can go to gv.com/print. They have a whole entire resource so you can run a design sprint yourself. You can get the book, and there's also designkit.org if you want to learn more about human-centered design thinking. There's free resources everywhere for these types of frameworks. So you won't be out there looking for, if you have questions, someone most likely has answered it. If you're looking for resources, most likely you can download these resources for free so you can start doing it with your team as well. All right, Kyle, I think I'm out of breath. I hope I made sense, but I wanted to get through a whole bunch in those first 45 minutes, just trying to give as much background as possible.
Always a lot to cover, but Levin, it was fantastic. And before I dive into the Q&A, I just love that you highlighted that ideas framework.
Sorry, Kyle, I can't hear you there. I think your mic went off again.
Sorry, is that better?
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. So I just kind of wanted to mention that I love the no bad ideas, because sometimes, as you mentioned, the parts of different ideas that become the best solution. But we have a full Q&A section here full of great questions from our participants. So let's fire right into those. So starting with Gareth, um, how frequently are design sprints used in the context beside private enterprise and designing products? So could it be used, for example, to develop a policy or a program?
Definitely. I think, like, since I've been at Colab for about 6 months, we've done 2 design sprints and we have one booked for 3 weeks from now. So depending on the project, so if you're starting something new, that is a great time to do it at the beginning of the project, or even sometimes midway through the project if it hasn't been done yet. It's never too late. If it hasn't shipped yet, you can still really tackle that on to make sure you're shipping the right thing. But yeah, generally, you want to look for the big opportunities because it is time consuming. So that's usually one of the biggest obstacles to doing one is taking, a whole chunk of your team and saying, we're not doing anything but this. That's why some people have tried these in like 3 days. So it's yeah, just looking for those top level opportunities. I think starting a brand new project or if there's been a part of the product with a lot of opportunity, it's probably a good time to do it. Hope that answers the question. Um,
Perfect. So Garrett, if you want any follow up to that, just ping us in the chatter. But he did have a follow up question too. So also from Garrett, it says it looks like you might have done that sample sprint virtually. That to do that, did you find it easy to do it virtually as opposed to in person?
mm. Yes, so we used Figma. So in Figma, they have the actual design tool, and they also have FigJam as part of the same tool. And it's more like a whiteboarding a kind of interface. So you can do like sticky notes and so on. There's other ones out there like Mural, who are other like sticky like note type of applications. Um, every single design sprint that I've ever done have been done virtually. I know that the design sprints in general, like if you read the book, so get in the same room, but honestly, you can really do this virtually. And you just want to, you make sure you're all chatting, you have a good connection to chat. But yeah, all done virtually. I don't think you need to be in person to do one. Um, there's lots of tools out there to help you, and also if you follow the book and the links there, they have tons of resources on how you can do this virtually as well. Oh, I can't hear your mic, Kyle. Sorry.
So Garrett, if you have any follow ups, just let us know in the chatter. So next question from Clayton Olford. Clayton asks, how do you avoid gold plating or spending too much time pursuing an idealized solution versus an acceptable solution?
Good question. Um, I think this is what's really important with the design sprint is that we're going to go in there without really anyone really having an idea of what that end solution is. And so hopefully on Mondays and those Tuesdays, those are where you're really challenging and trying to define the problem. And that will be, the guiding light throughout the week. Um, that's really what the basis is for this design sprint. So really the first half is really challenging all of the assumptions. So really, we don't want to be thinking, we don't want to get into that solution space at all until really that second half, when people start sharing their sketches and then you're collaborating together. Oh, how did you think about it? How did you think about the problem? And really collaborating, bringing them together. And so really that's really what design sprint's trying to nurture is that we don't know. So if we think we have this like idealized solution already before we got started, then it's almost like the design sprint is not really starting from the place it should be starting. Like we shouldn't have a solution in place. For example, like this work that we did for Colab, there was already a solution in place. And we went into that and said, like, we may just make a few changes to what exists, or we might completely overhaul it. And I was quick to, I made sure to say, we don't know yet. We really don't know till we go through this design exercise what is really needed. This thing we shipped is radically different from what was there before. And we all got to that place because we looked at all the data. We looked at all the problem. We looked at what we really wanted from it. And that really helped, shape the end state solution. So yeah, I would say I would discourage an idealized solution. Hopefully that idealized solution will come through by doing the activities, and you'll gather those insights. And then also after testing with users, even if that idealized solution pretty much makes it to that end, you'll validate it or invalidate it by talking to real customers or real people. So you want to be testing around 4 to 8 people on that Friday. Usually 6 is like an ideal because that gives you really strong insight. So 5, 6, I would really strive for, not just like a couple, like really try to hear from as many people as possible.
Awesome. So our next question is from Tolu. Um, his question is, what does the day-to-day look like for a UX designer?
We just draw a lot of rectangles in Figma, and that's my joke as a designer. Yeah, as a UX designer, I think one usually like right now at Collab, everyone's assigned to a project for 6 weeks, and prior to working on that project, there are 6 weeks prior to that that have gone into understanding the problem of the thing we want to solve. So even before a designer really starts designing anything, or before any developers start developing or writing a line of code, there's already been 6 weeks of thought and research done to make sure we're going to build that right thing. And those involve a design sprint. But once that designer now gets that, is again, they're going to take all that research. Maybe there is an opportunity to then speak to customers. What exists, what has worked for other products before implementing a solution. It's still trying to understand, as best as possible how we go about solving this. So really, for me, one of my biggest learning as a designer, I just thought I just got to make things that look cool, but that is true. But really, at its core of it is, do the way we're implementing the solution, is this really the best way to go about it? Is this really, do we need this behind a drop down? Or do we really need that button? Or do we really need that screen? Or could we solve this problem by doing it this way? So it's really challenging about how we go about solving it. So it's a little bit of like that mapping that I shared. There's a lot of user mapping. Like if a user clicks on this, what will they see? What do they expect to see on that screen? Do we provide that for them? It's just really thinking through the entire experience. And then really the designing is almost like really secondary, making it look really nice and doing fancy videos and such. That is really the fun part, because it's like, oh, we're really excited about, we confirmed our solution and validated it, so we can just really be focused on the making it look really nice and shiny and making it look good.
Excellent. So our next question is from Mordecai. Are there any parallels between designing products for people and designing products for a function? So his example is designing an AUV not intended for direct human use, but perhaps offshore observation.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think they're still related, because I think I would think about designing for function. I can't really want to ask, why do we need that function? Like, what are we trying to get out of that? What is the sole purpose of that? How does that work with the systems where it's providing that data for? What does that look like? Who is interpreting that data? How is that data used to make a decision of whatever the case may be? Because at the end, it may be abstracted away, maybe a couple of steps before like an actual person or human interacts with it. But eventually, a human will, or someone will make a decision based on something of some sort of product. Any product is made for some useful purpose. What is that useful purpose? And what is the whole, environment that it's in? And what is its end goal? Is it fulfilling that? Can we challenge that? Can we make that even better? what hasn't it worked? How could that product be a little bit better from what we know about it? So I always think that I think anything, I really struggle with trying to find a way of like when something is not really needed, um, to use a design sprint. I just feel like almost everything I could think about, we could really, really use. Like I just looked at a candle. I'm like, could I use a candle? Yeah, 100%. A candle tips over. Could we build a candle so that if it knows it tips over, it can just, put the light out, put the flame out? Like I just think about there's definitely, I think there's always a way to challenge it, and I think that's what a design sprint always does.
Great. Thank you, Levin. So last question we have in the Q&A here. So anybody who's in the chat, we have a few minutes left. So any last burning questions, feel free to pop them in. But Garrett had a follow-up, and it's
Mhm.
other than the Design Sprint book by Jake Knapp, what are some other resources that you recommend?
So on YouTube, there's some really great YouTube videos of if you type in design sprint, you'll see some. I think there's one person in particular has a video on it for like an hour, for like how to do every single day, all the things that you need. So definitely go on YouTube and check out what people have done. There's some really great case studies there. YouTube is a really, really great resource. Medium. So Medium, the blogging platform, they have a lot of resources there as well. So if you Google anything, you'll just find an array of resources out there. So if you have any questions about it, you certainly can do that. Like I said, again, if you want to get a good recap, like even more in depth into how these work, YouTube, there's really a lot of really great quality um, information out there. So I would suggest check those out.
Great. So next question is from Hosam. They mentioned that they noticed the session is being recorded, and where can I watch this session later? The Faculty of Engineering actually has a Student Design Hub YouTube channel. So we're going to post this video up there, but I'll throw the link in the chat so that you have that for your records. But if you search Faculty of Engineering, Engineering MUN on YouTube, you'll be able to find all of this session when it's posted, as well as past sessions. And Hosam's follow-up question was, I've been trying to find people in St. John's and Newfoundland who are into UX. Is there any sort of online community, like a Slack channel, that I can try and tap into?
Good question. It's something I struggle with as well. We don't have as many, the community's not as large here, but there is one that I am aware of. It's called Design NL, which is a Slack channel. So you can probably look that one up. I just know the name. I'm not sure of the actual link. You can certainly do that. Again, Twitter has a really good design community if you just want to follow along and read, what designers are saying in the design community. I would certainly suggest that. There's some really great podcasts out there that you can listen to. Right now, they are slipping my mind on a couple of those, but there's some really great podcasts out there you can also listen to just kind of learn more. And YouTube, like seriously, YouTube has so much great content. Honestly, that's where I learn almost everything that I know is from YouTube. Watching videos, there's just incredibly rich content there.
Excellent.
And there's one other too, Dribble with 3 Bs. If you just want to be inspired by UI, that's a fun one for you to check out as well.
Excellent. Well, I hope that answers your question, Hosam. So we're right at 2 o'clock. That's time, everyone. Thank you all for joining in on the discussion and participating. I'd like to thank you, Levin, for taking the time out of your busy day and what you have going on a CoLab to come and talk to the Student Design Hub community. I think it was a fantastic discussion, and we got some really great questions from the crowd. So thank you so much for taking the time to walk us through how.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Like I tried to pack in a lot into a short span of time, but I hope you all were able to get something out of it. A lot of great resources out there for all of you if you want to learn more. So yeah, thanks again for having me. I've really enjoyed chatting about it.
Perfect. All right. Well.